Welcome back, team. Today we're diving into Chapter 5, Ethics. If you're listening to this, you're probably not new to the game. You've cleared scenes others would hesitate on, you've earned trust in living rooms and in back hallways, and now you're practicing at the edge of EMS, community paramedicine, where relationships are longer, the autonomy is higher, and the ethical terrain gets, well, interesting. Here's where we're going. We will define ethics and why it matters for community paramedics, explore the big worldviews that shape how people decide what's right, hit the classic ethics theories without putting you to sleep, and most importantly, turn that into a clear, repeatable process you can use the next time a real human being puts a hard decision in your hands. Along the way, we'll use quick case stories you've likely seen versions of already. What do we mean by ethics and why does it matter? At its simplest, ethics is about figuring out what's right and what's wrong, then acting on it. In 901 EMS, we often leaned on protocol, medical direction, and the general momentum of the call. In community paramedicine, the tempo slows down just enough that you can hear the moral questions humming underneath the clinical ones. Why this matters for community paramedics? You work more independently and over longer timelines. You build relationships that can blur professional boundaries if you're not intentional. You will face problems protocols don't fully anticipate: end-of-life preferences, capacity versus autonomy, resource allocation, cultural friction, and chronic risk in unsafe environments. And since the community paramedic can be a part of a patient's healthcare journey, it can be easy to impose or inject beliefs that you have that may not align with the patient's beliefs. We've all said the Code of Ethics and the EMT Oath. Those vows point us in the right direction, but they don't hand you the tools to navigate the messy middle. That's what this episode is for, building habits of right decision-making. Quick example, the habit effect. If you casually use profanity off-duty, it'll leak out when a family is sobbing in front of you. Habits surface under stress. Ethics education is about building habits you will be proud of when it's 2 a.m. and the living room is full. Foundations, how people decide what's right. When we make decisions, we lean on rules, principles, actions, and consequences. But underneath all of that is the person's worldview, their operating system. 3 worldviews you'll meet in the field. Naturalism. Reality is only what we can measure. Science is the way of knowing. In practice, if I can't test it, I don't believe it. Theism. Reality includes the supernatural. Sacred texts and religious tradition are legitimate sources of truth. In practice, my decisions answer to God first. Medicine must fit within that. Modernism. Skepticism toward one-size-fits-all truth claims. Reality is constructed through culture, language, and lived experience. In practice, your truth isn't automatically my truth. Why does this matter for community paramedics? Well, you can't respect autonomy if you don't understand the lens your patient is using. You don't have to agree with it, but you do have to see it. For example, you're managing a heart failure frequent flyer who declines hospital care again. A naturalist patient might want numbers, vitals trends, answers to what the hospital will do beyond doing testing and sending bills, and objective risk. A theistic patient may prioritize prayer first and seek pastoral approval before invasive care. A postmodern patient may value narrative control. Others label me non-compliant. I'm choosing a different path. You still assess capacity, risk, and document like a pro, but how you connect varies with worldview. Let's move on to the classic ethics theories, the fast, useful version. You don't need a philosophy degree, you need a quick mental model. Utilitarianism, a type of consequentialism. Do the greatest good for the greatest number. Application, scarce resources, pandemic home visits, vaccine slots, MCI triage. Watch out, don't sacrifice the individual unjustly. Ends justify the means is a slippery slope. Example, you prioritize home visit slots for patients with highest hospitalization risk scores. That's defensible utilitarianism. Duty-based, do your duty, follow the rule that should apply to everyone. Application, keeps you from letting bias creep in. Watch out, blind rule following can harm if the rule doesn't fit the moment. Example, You treat the incarcerated patient who assaulted an officer with the same diligence as anyone else. Duty to act, full stop. Relativism, subjectivism, cultural relativism. Right and wrong depend on culture or personal feeling. Applications, respects cultural variation. Watch out, taken to extremes, nothing is truly wrong, which collapses law and safety. Virtue ethics, Aristotle's lane. Be the kind of professional whose character produces the right action. Cardinal virtues, prudence, wise judgment, justice, fairness, temperance, self-control, fortitude, courage. Application. Builds the habits that show up under stress. Watch out. Which virtues get priority when they conflict? It doesn't always tell you how to choose. Ethical reasoning, the practical move. Start with facts, check your bias, apply impartiality, weigh options, decide and document. It's the how you'll use day to day. Let's move on to respecting autonomy without abandoning beneficence. Autonomy is a patient's right to make informed, uncoerced decisions. In community paramedicine, most dilemmas are autonomy versus safety. Example case, capacity first. Elderly patient with recurrent falls refuses transport or to admit to rehab. You assess capacity, understand situation, options, risks, and can communicate a choice. If yes, autonomy stands, even if you strongly disagree. If no, you pivot, involve family, consult policy, and protect the patient. Do what you can to approach the situation from different angles, but still the patient has the autonomy to make that decision. Avoiding paternalism, because it's best for you, isn't enough. Offer clear risks, alternatives, and supports. Your job is to expand safe options, not to strong-arm consent. Stay focused on informing the patient on all the risks and benefits of their decisions and situation so they can make an informed decision, even if we do not agree with it personally. But let's shift to talking about how to actually apply ethics as a community paramedic. Think of this as two kinds of wisdom. Theoretical wisdom, which is knowing the concepts, and practical wisdom, which is running the play under real-world pressure. Let's look at this like a checklist, a stepped process. There are 10, but the process itself should be pretty intuitive. 1. Clarify the facts. What do I know versus what am I assuming? What's the clinical status? What's the home context? 2. Identify the stakeholders. Patient, family, caregivers, your agency, payers, neighbors, public safety. 3. Confirm capacity and preferences. Can the patient understand, appreciate, reason, and express a choice? Any advance directives? Cultural or religious constraints? 4. Name the ethical tension. Autonomy versus beneficence, justice versus utility, professional boundary versus therapeutic rapport. Generate options. More than transport versus no transport. Think safety add-ons, referrals, telehealth, scheduled follow-up, harm reduction. 6. Test options through lenses. Which option reduces overall harm? Deontological. What does duty policy require? Virtue. What would a prudent, fair, courageous clinician do? Autonomy. Does it respect a capacitated choice? 7. Check policy and law, local protocols, mandatory reporting, consent rules, documentation standards. Decide and act. Choose the least restrictive, safety-sufficient plan aligned with patient values and your duties. 9. Document like a pro. Facts, capacity assessment, risks discussed, options offered, patient's reasons, supports arranged, who you consulted. 10. Debrief and learn. Bring tough cases to case review. Build the habit. Sharpen the team. Case walkthrough, Mrs. C and the space heater. 82-year-old with COPD, oxygen tubing draped over a space heater and the space heater is too close to her recliner, refuses transport, says she's fine. Facts, fire risk, hypoxemia risk, home clutter noted. Stakeholders, patient, landlord, neighbors, shared walls, your agency. Capacity, she understands fire risk and can restate consequences. Capacity intact. Ethical tension, autonomy versus public safety and beneficence. Options: A. Leave with refusal, call fire marshal office for referral, reposition the heater and route for oxygen tubing education. D. Engage daughter discussing the risks and safety concerns. Seek voluntary transport. Lens test. A majority of the options just listed reduce risk for her and the building. Duty policy, offer transport if declined with capacity, honor it, mitigate hazards. Virtue, prudence, and justice say don't ignore community risk. Autonomy, keep the decision hers, don't coerce. Action, educate, make immediate environmental changes, connect fire prevention, schedule follow-up, document like a dissertation. Share at case review for system fixes. Maybe you create a rapid home safety kit workflow? Let's move on to strategies that protect your integrity in the field. Research on value-consistent behavior suggests 2 practical tactics. Delay the decision when safe. I'd like to talk through options and circle back this afternoon. Time lowers emotion and improves choices. Pre-script your hard conversations, not necessarily word for word, but bullet points to make sure you hit all the important parts. You've done this for cardiac arrest updates when you are thinking all roads are leading to field termination. Do it for ethics. The patient the right to decide. My job is to make sure you have the safest plan that matches the patient's values. Here are the risks I'm worried about, and here are 3 ways we can reduce them while honoring the patient's choice. We must also consider the organizational values. When agency values are clear and lived, not just wall art, they empower you. If your organization explicitly values dignity, equity, and safety, you can name those values in the moment. Our commitment to dignity means we'll honor your decision. Our commitment to safety means we can't leave the space heater against the oxygen tubing. Let's fix that together. Teams that rehearse values do better at consistent patient experience and documentation. Ethics remain a key component to our foundation as providers and our practice patient side. While it is not always the forward-facing discussion of our case reviews and post-encounter conversations, it is still there. Keeping an active consideration of ethics and how they apply to each situation, especially as a patient comes difficult. Ethics really emerge as an important consideration to make sure we are honoring the patient's wishes and best interests, even if they do not align with our own. All right, that's Lesson 5. Ethics isn't a philosophy class you had to survive. It's the operating system for community paramedicine. Build the habits now, because the living room is the final exam.